Hey everybody, I want to talk a little bit about Artist Alley and tabling at Artist Alley. I have tabled quite a bit before the pandemic and a little bit afterwards, and I have some ideas that may be a little bit unpopular, but I don't hear a lot of people talking about it, and I wanted to highlight some of these things. I have not had very successful experience with Artist Alley. Part of that I will explain later on in the video about why that is, but they haven't been bad experiences. I don't think it's possible to have a bad experience unless absolutely nobody stops by your table and you don't have any conversations at the con, but that's very unusual. My experience has just been very real, and I think it's something that happens a lot more often than not, and that just doesn't get talked about because people who don't do well don't make videos. Having poor days doesn't make good content. But I do want to highlight maybe a more realistic look at what it means to table at an Artist Alley and the costs that go into it. I'm not going to break down actual numbers because everybody's situation is so different, but here are some things that you would have to think about that maybe you haven't thought about before. So, the first harsh truth about Artist Alley that is a little bit unpopular is that your expenses is not just your table. And I think a lot of people know this. They think, of course, it's your hotel if you're staying in a hotel, your travel costs, but your expenses are a lot more than that. Your expenses are what it costs to make your products, what it costs to bag up your products. Every little glassine sleeve, ribbon, everything like that, it costs money. And a lot of times those costs get overlooked, and it can make you feel like you're turning a profit when in reality, in the best case scenario, you're just breaking even, or your profit doesn't make up for how much time you're investing, even the time when you just consider the time you're spending standing there at Artist Alley in those grueling hours selling product. So when you're doing your calculations, not that this should deter you, but you have to make sure you're including these other costs, and especially those hidden costs, because sometimes people will think, okay, I know I have to calculate my product, but you also have to calculate in those little extras, like I said, packaging items, displays, banners, and those kinds of things. They cost money, and even though some of these are a one-time cost, you still have to consider them in your setup. One of the things I have noticed that counteracts some of that is a lot of people have Etsy shops, and those Etsy shops make a certain amount of money, drum up a certain amount of customers, and feeds into what's going to happen at the Artist Alley. Also, they have a presence on social media that feeds into what happens in the Artist Alley. So there's ways you can use your social media, your Etsy shop to drum up more business so that you're going to ultimately counteract those other expenses, but you have to make sure that you include them into your calculation. That expense of doing an Artist Alley is a lot higher than just your table costs or just your travel and table costs. Another truth that people don't often talk about is that it's actually illegal to make fan art. Now, I would never discourage anybody from making fan art because a lot of times that's your sole marketing tool for getting people to stop at your table, is the fact that you have their favorite anime characters drawn in unique and colorful ways on your table. And some people will say, well, if it's different enough or uniquely imagined enough, it's okay. But in fact, it's not okay. The only time it is okay is when it's a parody, and a lot of times people are not looking for a parody. However, nobody is going to catch you in the act. Nobody is going to prosecute you for it unless you're at a convention where there's absolutely no fan art allowed. And a lot of times people get nervous about those kinds of conventions. No fan art allowed at all. Well, how would you build yourself up to be able to go to one of these conventions where no fan art is allowed? Because it is worth it. A lot of times you can be a very authentic artist in an Artist Alley where there's no fan art allowed, and really do well and get your name out there, your authentic art style and stuff like that out there, and it can be worth it. Well, how would you get to that point? So a recommendation would be, after watching a lot of convention content and stuff like that, a really good process would be, start off doing your fan art, but make sure you're incorporating original pieces from the start, and that you always have an example of some of your original work on your table. In that case, people are able to see how you're developing as an artist and how you're developing your own style and stuff like that. So over time, as you become more known in the Artist Alley spaces, you will be recognized as the artist who makes really cute flowers or really cute food art and stuff like that. And you'll notice that people who do really well at Artist Alley have a certain amount of original work that they build up over time, and eventually that becomes their whole presence. Is they have maybe a few pieces of fan art, but most of it is their original work. And these people are the ones that people come to Artist Alley to see over and over again for them, and they build a very loyal following and things like that. So it can be a curse as well as a blessing, to make your own, original art. If you just have original art, it's not going to go well because nobody knows what they're stopping by your table for. But if you use the fan art for what it's supposed to be, which is a marketing tool, you're really going to set yourself up for success, for people to be a fan of your art. Another harsh truth, I hear this a lot, is location mattering at a con. Like, oh, I had a table in the back, so I didn't get as much traffic, so people didn't stop by the table, blah, 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 blah. There are some cases where this is true. So if certain conventions have like a bottleneck, and then you're behind the bottleneck and people don't know that they can go through that doorway and see the rest of the tables, in that case, yes, this is true. But for the most part, there's nothing going on at the convention other than Artist Alley. And by that, I mean there's swaths of time where there's nothing going on except people touring Artist Alley. And people are very nosy, especially the con goers. They've spent good money to be there, so they are going to go in every nook and cranny and look at every single table more than one time. And this is a harsh truth, because if people are not stopping by your table, there's something wrong with your table. And you have to be honest about what's going on with your table. Maybe you don't have a banner high enough. Maybe your stuff isn't eye-catching enough. Maybe your marketing isn't clear enough. Maybe they don't know exactly what you're selling. Maybe you're too new and you've got too much original art and not enough fan art. Who knows what the deal is, but it takes, some looking at, and have friends stop by your table and take a look and see, what would you improve? I haven't had a lot of people stop by my booth. What would you improve? Also, check your area. If you really think, okay, it's definitely location, then check the people around you. Are they doing well? If they're doing well, it's definitely a booth problem. So this is a harsh truth, but it can be in your favor, because a lot of times, you think your booth looks good to you, but it's not about what it looks good to you. It's about what's functional for the people who are coming by your booth. So use this data to help you become a better salesperson at the con. Use that data to help you make a more enticing booth. Don't always blame it on your location in the con, because that's not always reality. It's rarely reality. People are there. They spent good money. They're going to stop by. They're going to stop by as many booths as humanly possible because they're curious. And if they're not curious about your booth, there's something wrong with your booth, and you have to be honest about that. So let me talk about my experiences in Artist Alley. So the first time I did Artist Alley, I want to say it was 2019. I did a whole summer's worth of shows, and I did all original art because I, really knew about my second principle, which is that fan art is illegal, and I didn't want to do anything illegal. Well, I didn't understand the nuance with that people weren't going to actually catch you. They weren't going to prosecute you. It's not that kind of a thing. It's just the concept of it is illegal technically, but you're not going to make enough money that anybody is really going to be interested in pursuing you. That doesn't mean build your whole, your whole name brand on fan art. That's not wise, because if the rules get more strict, you don't have anything to fall back on, or if you want to attend a con where no fan art is allowed, you don't have anything to fall back on. So having just fan art is not wise, but having some fan art, like I said, it's a good marketing tool, and I didn't have that. But did I have a bad experience? No. Did I make any money? No. Did I cover table? No. Did I cover any expense? No. But what did happen was I got my name out there. People started getting used to seeing my booth. And towards the end of the summer, after I had gone to pretty much every show in Virginia, and some in North Carolina and some in DC, I got a little bit of recognition and more people stopped by my booth, and it was a very pleasant experience. 2020, nothing happened, obviously for good reason. 2021, I started tabling again, and the shows went very well. The first show that went very well was at BlurredCon, and I was breaking table for the first time. And again, that's not a great show. That's financially not a great show, but for me, that was a good show because I still did not have any fan art. This was just based on me having, my original stuff, and I had a comic book that was out, and I sold my comic book and gave away a lot of business cards, a lot of free buttons. People, got used to my name and stuff like that, which is all positive. I got a lot of hits on Etsy, and I sold a lot of books on Etsy after the fact. So that was a positive experience. However, if I were to do it over again, I would have had some items of fan art. Now, the last show I did in 2021, was a local show. Not a lot of con goers because it was still toward the end of people feeling very nervous about going out. So very, very small amount of con goers. However, I did break table in that case as well. And to me, this was a success because I did, sell a lot of items. I sold a lot of original work. I sold comic books, and I did have fan art at my table, and that was a draw. I didn't sell fan art at my table. Like, nobody bought it. People wanted to buy the original work, but people came to the table because there was fan art. So I thought that was really interesting, as a person who hasn't had positive experiences as far as making money. I didn't do it to make money. I did it to get a vibe on how my art was, if people were feeling it, if people liked it, that kind of thing. And I got a lot of good feedback. I also used it as sort of like a beta test to see how my comic book was doing, if people liked the comic book, if there were plot issues. I even had people read it at the table and then give me feedback right then. It's a lot of money for just that, but when you think about it, if I were to pay for people to edit the story and things like that, I'd be paying a lot of money for an editor. I might even be paying for beta readers or content readers and stuff like that. So instead of doing that, I got to sell some copies, see a new city, talk to a bunch of people, hang out with the con experience, and get some other art items out there. So there was a lot of other things going on besides just beta reading for my comic book. So for me personally, as far as networking, it was a really good experience and gave me a lot of positive feedback. However, I wouldn't say I was successful because I didn't make any money as far as my business. So, again, these stories I don't think are said very much. People who don't do exceptionally well at conventions, the stories aren't told very often, but I did want to share mine because I think a more realistic view needs to be brought forward. Moving forward, I do want to do conventions again. Will I have fan art? No, I won't have fan art, but I will do something a little bit different. I am going to have a more witchy theme to my booth and sell my own design tarot cards, which is universally appreciated, and sell little tchotchkes that have to do with like crystal balls and crystal ball keychains and some, crystals and things like that, made into jewelry and items that people identify with, even if it's not fan art. It's still art that people identify with, which can be as good as fan art. Like when people do really, kawaii art of food and stuff like that, has universal appeal. So even if they're not doing fan art, they have stuff that's got universal appeal. So that's what I'm going to do moving forward. I'm going to try to book a couple of shows this year. It's a little bit harder to get into shows lately just because of the demand. People are starved for a convention. People are starved to table at a convention, so they are a little bit more picky. But I'll see what I can do about getting into a show, and if I do table, I'll show my experience, which I haven't done before. I think I have over on Instagram, but I haven't shown like what my table looks like and stuff like that on YouTube. So I will do that if I wind up getting in a show this year. I'm only going to do local shows if I do a show, just because I'm going to kind of soft launch my finished comic book in its, in its graphic novel form, and drum up some excitement for the next book that's coming out, the one that I'm drawing right now. Anyway, that's my story. If you have any experiences that are less than positive, I'd like to hear it. I think we can learn from the not so great experiences as much as the good experiences. And if you do Artist Alley that's not a conventional way, so not a lot of fan art heavy, if you do, Artist Alley in a non-conventional way, please share that. I would like to look at your stuff. I'm always interested in finding new artists and seeing how they do things differently and think outside the box. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.